going to get on, we're going to get started. I'm going to get on my guest today, who is amazing. Let me bring her on so that we can begin this conversation. If anti-aging, longevity, better health, and all things skin, hair, nails, and beauty mean anything to you, then this is a conversation that you're going to not want to miss. I just invited Leslie. Let's see. Hi! Yay! It's so nice to see you face to face. You look exactly like you are. Just
Likewise. Well, you are even more glamorous and vibrant in person. So it's a real pleasure to be able to chat with you real time. Fantastic.
oh, beautiful. You know, it's so funny. We were trying to connect and decide when we could get together because obviously you're in England. Is that correct?
I'm in England. Yes.
Oh, perfect. And, and I'm not an early bird. And of course, you know what happened yesterday? My youngest daughter gets COVID. She somehow escaped it the entire, 3 years. We all got it. She did. I was yesterday spending the day, getting the doctors and all that stuff. And she was up at 5:30 this morning. And I was like, oh, when it rains, of course. But luckily I've got her, it's crazy because after 3 years of this, there's still no standard protocol, or it's still amazing how much of a cluster, which is why it's so important what we're going to talk about today. Taking your own hands.
Absolutely. I think that empowerment and education, these are things that we all need to do as patients. And as an autoimmune survivor, I definitely, I'm so glad that I decided to do this because I think a lot of patients don't. And we like to outsource and just give that power to the quote unquote professionals around us. But we actually know our bodies much better than they do because we get data points, hundreds of thousands of data points every single hour. Right? We know how we feel in our skin and if we feel good or not. So longevity is a lot to do with empowerment, because as we've all heard, well, at least when we were before 50 or when we were very young, we heard that, you go over the hill at sort of 30, right? I remember being 12 and thinking, oh, those people who are 26 are so old, right? And a lot of people, as we get older, especially as we're postmenopausal, we're told that there's nothing we can do about what is happening to our bodies. And yet there are many things that we can do. I mean, on the menopausal front, of course, there are bioidentical hormones that we can take if we want. There are precursors like DHEA and pregnenolone that we can do. Stem cells, PRP for skin. But there's a really exciting field around slowing aging. And if we can slow aging, we have the opportunity to avoid the diseases of aging. So getting older is the number one risk factor for getting Alzheimer's, for getting heart disease, for just any of those diseases of aging. And so I'm all about slowing aging and using a process that the body uses when we're young called autophagy or autophagy. Either way is fine. And it just means it's basically cellular cleanup, taking the rubbish out of your cells, having that little Marie Kondo in there, just bagging up all the clutter and getting rid of it. And if we do that, our cells are perfect and zen and they function well. So that's really my message, is just because we are older does not mean that there is nothing we can do about our aging. There's a lot we can do about it.
Oh my gosh, you have said so much juicy stuff that's like, I'm like, yes, amen, 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 1,000 times. I've been a health coach for almost over 2 decades. I'm not actively practicing now, but that was something I was very active in doing. And one of the first things that I learned and taught every one of my students exactly what you said is you have got to become your own health advocate.
Yeah.
Our body is innate. We have gone to sleep into what the signals are, and our doctors are there to support, but they are not the be all end all at all. You have got to be an active participant in your life, and you pay now or you pay later, which you've got to take some active steps, which is what we're going to talk about today. That some people say, oh yeah, I don't want to spend the money. Well, it's like McDonald's. You can eat McDonald's now, but you'll pay for your health later.
Yeah.
In life. So it's, it's this balance that you've got to, and what's really most important.
Absolutely.
Sure. So why don't we I am a huge fan. I'm going to preface this because we'll get into, why I love it so much. But I started taking your product about, I want to say it's almost been a year and a half now.
Wow.
It's definitely been over a year. And that I knew within the first couple of days, things started changing for me. And I have been wanting to talk for so long on this, but now I'm actually glad that it's taken a little bit longer, because especially when people take supplements or take things, they're kind of like, oh yeah, you're just taking it. How do you know? The fact that I'm still taking it and will continue, I think speaks volumes. And I sent you a message in a little video a while back with hair growth and things that was like a big deal. So why don't we start, Leslie, with, I want to hear your story, but prior to that, just so we can engage the audience, what is it? What is Spermidine, right? That's what is this product? What is this golden ingredient?
Well, first of all, I don't want to put anybody off by the slightly odd sounding name. We all make it in our bodies naturally, men and women. Your grandmother makes it, your dog makes it, your cat, your hamster, all plants make it. So important to all human life is this molecule that we all make it. And when we're young, we make about a third of it in our tissues, a third in our gut biome, and we get another third from plant material primarily. And as we get older, our tissue's ability to manufacture spermidine goes down. So then we have to rely on the health of our gut biome and getting it from food. So plants like mushrooms and anything fermented, like fermented soybeans, sauerkraut, kimchi, that will have a lot of spermidine in it. And you can also get it from peas and legumes. But, manufacturing in our gut biome is not great if we've been exposed to broad spectrum antibiotics. And so if it's down in tissue production, it's down in gut biome production, then we are really reliant on getting it from these foods. And we know in the longevity blue zones, places like the Mediterranean, like Sardinia or Okinawa in Japan, those people with the highest longevity and health span have lots of spermidine in their diet. And these people, they don't just live a long time, but they're really vital. And I think that, if we all knew that we could live to 110 and we'd still be able to salsa or go out and enjoy people and party, who wouldn't want to live longer, right? That is what it's all about, vitality. So these older populations have high spermidine content, they have high lifespan and health span, and they are very vital. They have their cognition as well, right? We've got to be able to remember who it is that we're with. And so spermidine is correlated with all of those things that I've just talked about. Memory, cognition, it's correlated with cardiovascular health, it's correlated with strong elderly immune systems. That's the work that's been done here at the University of Oxford. And I was just at some exciting lectures today for Longevity Week at Oregon College, Oxford, and they were talking about the connection between the immune health as we get older and our neural health, which is very, very interesting because we ladies have twice the chance of getting Alzheimer's than men, right? So we need to take steps to keep our brains healthy. But what's cool about spermidine is that it has these wonderful beauty benefits too. So spermidine is a wonderful potentiator of hair growth. And this is something a lot of people are like, look at all the baby hair.
No, I love it.
Yeah, so it's really funny. And eyelashes as well. That was the first thing I noticed, because I had been on a spermidine product that was only available in Europe before, and I wanted to get it to the US for my mom. I couldn't, so I found this one in Japan. I started taking that, and all of a sudden, I looked in the mirror one day and was like, I have eyelashes. That's so strange. It helps with nail growth, and it does help with melanogenesis. So what's
What that is, I listened to another podcast. We're talking about that. Explain, because not just with the hair, but also with melasma and whatnot.
Exactly. So it works a lot like another molecule called glutathione. Basically, let's think about melanin or pigment production as needing to be in balance. Now, when it is in balance, we get pigment here in our hair, in the hair follicle, and we don't get spots on our face. But when it's dysfunctional, we notice that we get melasma, right? And we can get it, it's not just on our face, we might get it on our legs or other places. And what's so interesting is that spermidine seems to improve melanin in the skin, and so that it's not out of balance, it's not where it shouldn't be, but it also puts the hair follicle back into what's called the anagen or the growth phase. So hair follicles are in the growth phase, the resting phase, that's called catagen, and then the shedding phase, which is called telogen. And
is it a continual cycle?
It is. But as we get older, that anagen cycle gets shorter and shorter. So anagen can go from anywhere from 3 to 7 years. And some of our, you may have noticed with some of your much older relatives that just the hair begins to thin because actually it just stops even going through the cycle, right?
Okay.
And so what we want to do is for thicker hair, especially for those of us who had, the virus that shall not be named, and lost hair, what we want to do is make those dormant hair follicles wake up again and go back into the growth phase. And that is one of the things that spermidine can do, is it can move the hair follicle back into the anagen phase, the growth phase, and that is the only time that pigment production happens. So,
okay, so let me ask you something. So if you were someone, let's just say that you've had the hair loss for a long time, or I guess it's maybe not necessarily for everyone, but that the potential to do this, even at a much older age, someone you can wake that back up.
Yeah, you can. So we've had people send us photos, and we had a woman who was 79 and who had a kind of an Alice band of dark hair coming back in. So she had been completely white before, and it just started coming back in. And the only thing she was on was the Primeadine. So she took fish oil and vitamin D, and she was on statins. So that was kind of her protocol. Then we had a guy who was in his 60s, early 60s, and he had no hair on top. He had a little bit of hair around the sides, and he had been on finasteride, which basically slows down male pattern baldness, and he was on growth hormone. And he had been on that for a long time with an anti-aging doctor, and his hair had not grown back. Then he added the spermidine, the Primeadine back in. And in 2 months, his whole, I've said, can I please share this photo? His whole head was covered. It's, it was not like super, super thick, but it was definitely, you would not say that guy is bald. And so it's, it's quite promising. I'm not saying that if you are bald that you can get it all back. He took a very particular approach, finasteride, to stop some of the male pattern hair loss and the growth hormone, but it's very promising.
Wow. So you mentioned, that's just one thing. Like I said, I'm super excited about about the hair growth and all of the beauty aspects. And I want to talk about this, why it's so important, especially for my viewers and my Instagram family and social media family, because of, I'm going to say, the menopause. My whole Cadistone, what is that, what it's called? Cadistone storm, if you will, happened with menopause. My health was just plugging along, everything, like I said, I was living the most vibrant, healthy, fabulous life, energy to boot. I thought it was endless. I figured I found the healthcare, the ticket to the healthcare crisis. It was a complete diet and lifestyle change.
Yeah.
And when it hit it was catastrophic for me. And you know, coming from a woman who I pretty much didn't drink anymore, like no drinking. I ate basically a plant-based diet, meditated, yoga, you know, less stress, this life with such a robust, healthy toolbox of tools.
Yeah.
And I had every single symptom, Leslie, except for weight gain. Like that was the only thing that didn't hit me. But my memory loss was so bad that I was actually in Dale Bredesen's protocol. His what was it called? Not reboot, restore. It was his first program because
Yes.
I did things like, you're actually a candidate for this. I turned out to have you know, one of the genes for the APO4 genes on there. But so my quality of life was so bad, the memory, the cognition, body aches, pains, hair loss, you name it, that I didn't think I wanted to be here anymore. I thought, if this is the quality of life, and I was started bioidentical hormones, which helped. I mean, I don't know where I'd be without them. But I also know it is more, you know, we have to be our own health advocate. I had to be more diligent than I ever thought possible. I can tell you now, not to scare people, that with all the protocols and things that I do, I have freaking fabulous life, and I feel healthy, better than I have felt in years.
Yeah.
But let's talk about how menopause, because I know so many of the story I just shared, there are so many of my sisters, my silver sisters, that are in the thick of this right now.
Yeah.
And I want to hope, but also how can Spermidine support, which you call it Primeadine. I don't know. I want to know how to support. I want you to tell your story, and I want them to understand how might this support them in all of the yucky symptoms that the non parts of menopause.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you know, I'm 57, so I went through the menopause at age 50, and it was, I was probably fasting too much, and I think I probably accelerated the menopause because I got the sweats. I couldn't, you know, I'd wake up in the middle of the night just sweating profusely. I had terrible time sleeping. Bioidentical hormone replacement therapy was a lifesaver for me. Really, progesterone was, but I was under a lot of stress, and my cortisol was high, and cortisol is made from progesterone. So for those of us women who are in that sandwich period, when we have kids who might still be teenagers, and we have parents that need us, and we have the demands of a job, and we stay up late, and we're exposed to blue light that raises cortisol, we have stress that raises cortisol, we are going to deplete our already dwindling supply of progesterone. So that BHRT is super important. And I've talked to Dale Bredesen about it, and he is all over it and says categorically, women, this is what is going to protect your brain. If you are worried about Alzheimer's or dementia later, you must look at BHRT. And if you are worried about, or you've got the BRCA gene, take things like DIM or calcium D-glucarate or glutathione to flush, or N-acetylcysteine to help detox that bad estrogen that can become cancerous. But you must.
Oh, so he's saying, okay, I didn't realize, he's saying that, you know, even those that are afraid of it, you can still take, his suggestion is still take it, but take these.
You can take detox. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And you know, you can test, your practitioner can test to see if you are one of these people who happen to be a poor detoxifier. And I happen to be a poor detoxifier.
My doctor said, he looked at my chart and he said, Vanessa, honestly, you're a shitty detoxer. Okay. So yeah, right there with you.
The good news is that, so we have, you know, Primeadine, which I call Primeadine because it puts you in what I like to call the new prime of life, right?
I love this. I heard that. You said that on another podcast. I said that I'm in love with the word Primeadine now. I love it because it's like that new spring. It's what Japanese, what do they say? Is it the second spring or
yes?
Like that? It's so lovely and beautiful, and it's such a fitting name.
Yeah, exactly. So I knew my mother would never be able to bring herself to say the name of this molecule. And I just thought, well, what does it do? What it does is it actually, you know, we always think about being in our prime in our 20s, but actually our bodies have the capacity to be in the new prime of life. Mm-hmm. You've got all this wisdom. Once we're postmenopausal, tons of wisdom, happy in my skin. and all I need is the vitality that I had before. And guess what? You can get it if you can trigger autophagy in your body. So that is what having an autophagy activator like Primeadine, Spermidine is all about. Now, how it's good for people going through menopause is that it helps increase hormones. I would still highly recommend the BHRT. However, you can also help your body stay more in balance by using Spermidine. It will increase, in studies in Canada, they have shown in humans that it has increased DHEA and pregnenolone, both of which are precursors to testosterone. We women need some testosterone for some get up and go, also for our libido, right? Also for some sensitivity in all the right places, right? And for estradiol and progesterone production as well. So after only 30 days, they could show that the women who were taking this actually increased all of those hormones I have just mentioned. And so that's really important. But another thing that it does is it helps with sleep. And I can't overemphasize sleep. It's, first of all, when we sleep, we are activating autophagy as well. It is the best, cheapest way to stay young, energetic, and beautiful as we get older. And it's free. And but as we get older, because we don't have as much progesterone and our melatonin levels go down, we tend to have poor sleep. And that is correlated about 15, 20 years later with onset of dementia and Alzheimer's in women, right?
I know if I don't get enough sleep, I'm a wreck at best. And that is the first thing I noticed when I started taking is I'm literally within a day or two, my sleep. Like I said, I have a robust toolbox of biohacking things that I take, but this was like, when I started that was like the only new protocol. And I was like, wow. And of course I Googled right away, and it's like, the sleep was definitely something that people were right away. Wow.
Yeah. It's deep sleep. So I've got an Aura ring on here, which you've got one too. Yes. We should do the tribal handshake now.
Yes.
So on people's Aura rings or BioStraps or Garmin or Fitbit, they generally can see the increase in deep sleep. Now, why is deep sleep important, and especially for women? So we might know that we've got two types of sleep. One is deep and the other is REM. REM is where we're consolidating our memories and we're dreaming. Deep sleep is actually where the different compartments inside the brain are shrinking. And they are allowing channels in between these different sections of the brain to appear, and cerebrospinal fluid travels through there and it takes away the waste. That is called the glymphatic system. So, we know about the lymphatic system. We're always dry brushing to get the lymphatic system working. Well, guess what? We have something similar in our brain called the glymphatic system. This was discovered at Cornell University. And there is a theory that also nutrients are taken into the brain through that glymphatic system. But it only happens when we are in that deep sleep period. And I have seen people's Aura ring scores where they get 15 minutes of deep sleep at best. Now, for me, as a 57-year-old woman, I really want to have at least 90 minutes of deep sleep, if not 2 hours. And Spermidine will do that. It will actually modulate something called the clock genes. These speak to, I'm not going to go to too much detail, but they basically modulate the circadian rhythm. So when we're young, you've maybe seen a 5-year-old sleep anywhere, right? Our children, we just know they could sleep absolutely anywhere. In the middle of a train station, they have no problem falling asleep. But as we get older, that gets dysregulated, and that is due to these clock genes. And so resetting them is very important, and Spermidine resets at least 2 out of 8 of these clock genes. So we know we have evidence for the resetting of 2, and most likely it has an impact on the others, though I cannot scientifically prove it yet. And that is one of the reasons why people seem to be getting good deep sleep on, on Primeadine. But we also put a prebiotic in there to help selectively feed the gut bacteria that can manufacture Spermidine. Because you know, why just continually supplement when the body actually has this wonderful internal pharmacy in the gut biome, right? Our gut makes B vitamin, serotonin, and it also can make spermidine. But we've got to feed those colonies that make spermidine. And how you do that is with prebiotic fiber. So
is there a specific kind of I mean, because obviously there's so many different bacteria.
yeah.
So it's a specific one that kind of focuses on those particular bacteria that are.
So oligosaccharides. And so what's very interesting is I may have mentioned earlier that human breast milk is full of spermidine. But guess what? It's also full of fructooligosaccharides. And those fructooligosaccharides are a resistant starch that the infant gut is not going to be able to digest. It goes straight to the gut biome. So when babies pass through the birth canal, the mother basically bequeaths the baby with a little bit of healthy bacteria from her own gut biome. And then as she's feeding the baby, she is feeding it these fructooligosaccharides to feed those microbiome populations, as well as giving the baby spermidine to grow. But it's this, you know, this tag team. The gut biome can make the spermidine, and, you know, she's also feeding the baby this spermidine, and then of course tissue production. So you know, when we're older, the gut biome is still there. We can still tap into the beauty and wisdom of it, but we've got to feed the healthy bacteria. And it's these fructooligosaccharides that are so important. Resistant starch, any kind of fiber is so good for us.
Right. Well, think about it, Leslie, you know, the gut, you know, this being a second brain, as we call it, is everyone talking about, you know, your gut health these days. Like, that is like the hottest topic. And it's what's so messed up from all of the standard American diet and lifestyle that it's so out of balance, that's creating you know, major issues in every area.
Processed foods, I think it's a real problem. You know, we have too many omega-6 fatty acids in our diet, not enough omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory, very good for brain health. So it's another reason why we took out the polyunsaturated fatty acids that are in wheat germ naturally. We took those out because they go rancid so fast, and they are essentially rancid omega-6s.
Okay, so it's interesting that you say that. And also, two things. One, I want to stop for a second. What I did not announce is we are doing, viewers, we are doing a giveaway at the end of this talk. So please stick around so that you can get a chance to win some of your own amazing Primeadine supplement. Okay, so back to conversation. I also, once I found out about this, I of course then went like, ooh, where can I get it? I bought wheat germ. And it's funny that you say that, because I was like, I'm gonna take this and I want to, like, more is more. You know?
Right.
But I had no idea. It's interesting because I started noticing pretty quickly that it was like a turned off taste, which is that thing. I noticed that myself. I had no clue. I know about now. I'm actually in Dave Asprey's kind of his Upgrade Collective, and so I've learned a lot more lately in the last year, and about oils and all of that. I had no idea. So you're telling me that if you're taking that and it's a rancid oil, how does that negatively affect? Right, because we were taking it for the effect, but because we got this compound that if it's rancid, does more harm than good.
Exactly. So, I mean, there are two things about omega-6 fatty acids. We do need them, but they, as you know, as a health coach, we need omega-6 and omega-3 in a particular ratio. And at the moment, we don't get a lot of omega-3s, and we get far too many omega-6s. Now, omega-6s can be extremely fragile. As soon as oxygen hits, they go rancid. And that's why sometimes maybe with nuts, you know, nuts go off, especially as we're coming up to the holidays. I always remember my grandmother would leave out nuts, and you'd sort of taste one, you think, oh, that's gross. What happened? That's you know, we can taste rancidity in nuts. That is rancid omega-6s. So with nuts, and with wheat germ. I always say, yes, you can eat those things, but you've got to make sure that how they have been handled is they've been handled properly. So once they've been shelled, they need to be refrigerated, right? And so if you can find a health food store that is really good about the whole supply chain, so these things are from the factory, they are taken in refrigerated vans to a refrigerated, yeah.
That's rare, very rare.
It is really, really rare. And I remember having a conversation. I used to live in Colorado, and having a conversation with someone at a natural food store who said, oh, don't buy that one. Don't buy those omega-3s. And I was like, oh, but why not? That's a good brand. And she said, oh, no, I saw them come in. They came in on a truck, and it was like 100 and something degrees. And, they just baked there for however long. And then, they were in the back, and they didn't go into the refrigerator until later. So of course, as consumers, we do get things from the refrigerated section of the health food store, but we don't know where that's been beforehand, right?
It's very similar to the water. I mean, we look at it all the time. People buy water bottles and sitting out in the sun and baking prior to in the plastic. So it's really sad.
Yeah, exactly. But we do have to, sadly, think about all of these things because provenance matters, right? And in the same way that we don't want those plastic residues in our water, we don't want these rancid fats because they are pro-inflammatory.
Okay, so the product, we know it's in natto, which I actually don't mind. I found it at a couple of Japanese sushi places. I would be someone, I would definitely have a little jar of that, if I could just have it there in addition to. But what's the amount? So there's a few different, tell me other items that carry it that have the sperm. But what is the difference between, even if you were, say I had natto that I was eating like a little spoonful of every day versus the Primeadine, what are the, kind of extra benefits?
Sure. Well, so from the issue with food is that the amount varies from crop to we simply don't know. We simply don't know with natto how much spermidine is in there. It is a very good source of spermidine, but you might get one batch and it has X amount, and the next one will have, Y amount. And it is simply not predictable.
Okay.
With with the fact that there is going to be normal variation in crops based on sunlight exposure to the bacteria, the healthy bacteria in the soil itself, how clean the soil is, and the nutrients being pulled up by the roots of that plant into that vegetable or fruit. So there's just this variation. The reason why people supplement, or why there's a recommendation to supplement, is simply that no matter what, you don't have to worry about the variation in your food. You will get a minimum of 1 milligram of spermidine in your supplement. And that is the amount that has been studied in older humans between the ages of 60 and 90 who had subjective cognitive decline, and we could show that they actually had improvement in memory and cognition after 30 days. So that's the whole reason for taking a supplement. You know that you are getting this minimum effective dose, as it were, that has been shown to improve memory and cognition.
Right. And so obviously with you, your brand, tell us a little bit. Actually, you know what I would like to do at this point? I want you to tell your story. You can kind of, however you want to tell your story, and then you can segue that into the brand and your sourcing.
Sure.
Why Primeadine? The all-star supplement that's food grade too, which is awesome, by the way. That it's
food grade. Yeah, it's food grade because actually we have, as humans, we've co-evolved with plants, and the receptors in our bodies, they actually recognize these molecules from plants, right? Thousands of years of co-evolution, and synthetic molecules can mimic these molecular structures, but in a two-dimensional way. So I always say that if you get a synthetic spermidine or, synthetic anything, it's like saying, oh, my two hands are identical molecular mimics of each other, right? Because they line up. They look like they line up perfectly. But guess what? If I try to put a glove from my left hand on my right, that doesn't work, right? Because molecules are three-dimensional. They're not just mirror images. They have to be three-dimensional. So it's very important that we get these three-dimensional molecules that are therefore more bioavailable, because the receptors, everything locks on just better, like a glove, right? Why I started this, it all really, really came down to the fact that I'm a patient. And when I was 39, back in 2004, I was desperately trying to have a baby. And I was on my 5th round of IVF.
I have 2 IVF babies.
Yep. So we've got that in common. And I was told you have to do donor eggs. So I was in a donor egg round. And I had such terrible pain in my hands. I could not use scissors. I could not turn doorknobs. I couldn't turn the faucets. And I went to the doctor. I said, look, I've got this pain in my hands. What is it? They did these tests. And I got the phone call where she says, your results are in. Can you please come into the office? And I'm thinking, that's not good, right? You never want them to say that. Normally, they just have the nurse tell you it's all fine. So I went in and she said, well, the pain in your hands, you definitely have rheumatoid arthritis, because I thought maybe it is arthritis. And then she said, and we'll give you these immune suppressants to take. You just inject them, like no big deal, inject them into your belly, right?
Yeah.
No biggie. And then she said, but you also have something, you have lupus. And I was like, okay, right. So there are these injectables for the rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, what's the cure for the lupus? And she said, well, there is no cure. And I said, super inconvenient. I am doing my 5th round of IVF. I am using donor eggs. This is really important that I get this right. They're telling me at the IVF clinic, I am way too old already. And that's why I need to use donor eggs. But you're telling me there's no cure for this thing? And the doctor looked at me and she said, your cytokine levels, your tumor necrosis alpha levels, they're sky high. You shouldn't have a baby. Don't have a baby. You have 5 years left. You need 5 good years left.
What did you do?
Well, then I was sort of stunned, because I'd never heard of this illness ever before. And it's like what Brene Brown says, when you have a negative thought, she always says, ask, is that true? And I think some people think when someone in a white coat with a lot of certificates behind them says, you have this and there's no cure, they simply say, right, I agree with you. But in my case, I had that Brene Brown moment where I was like, is that true? Is that true? There is no cure. Is it true that I have this? And I said, well, what if the test is wrong? Maybe you've got a false positive. Could we take the test again? And she gave me that sympathetic look that says, well, they're really, no, the test is right. But she said, well, it's your insurance. And so I left knowing I could come back and do that test, but I thought I have to throw the kitchen sink at this. Now, I had already spent a year while I was at UC Berkeley. I took a year out to go back to the Midwest, to Indiana, to take care of my grandmother who had a brain tumor. So I was thinking, through my head, I was thinking about her death and thinking, am I ready to die? I don't think so. And I did everything. I did yoga, meditation, Mayan uterine massage. If they would have told me to stand on one leg, hop up and down under a full moon, I would do it, right? I did lots of journaling. I did lots of hiking. I was living in Colorado. I did lots of hikes in the Rockies. I gave up all work. And I found a book by Dr. Barry Sears called The Zone Anti-Inflammatory Diet. I followed that diet to a T because I had done research and I could see that lupus and rheumatoid arthritis had as their root cause inflammation. Inflammation, we now know, is a hallmark of aging. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do whatever I can to reduce inflammation. I took tons of fish oil, omega-3s. I started making my own almond milk and my little Vitamix,
Mm-hmm.
and doing all the things, eating a Mediterranean diet. And I also did something called intravenous immunoglobulin, which I still recommend anyone with an autoimmune condition or who has a relative. I always say, please, please, please look
What
up
is
the research on IVIG. It is actually, it doesn't sound very appealing, but it's white blood cells pooled from thousands of people. And what it does, it brings the immune system back into balance. So I had been offered the gigantic box of immune suppressants. And
mm.
when they said my immune system is, strong, it's too strong, I thought, but isn't that good? Isn't strength, good, right? And they were saying, no, 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 it's too strong, so we have to suppress it. But from my point of view, I didn't want to suppress it. I also didn't want it strong. I wanted it in the Goldilocks zone, right? Not too hot, not too cold. I want it to be in balance. Why were the doctors not saying to me, just bring your immune system into balance? So with intravenous immunoglobulin, I had two infusions. They were each $12,000. And
Wow.
I have calculated, it was a lot up front. It was a risk. There's very good evidence behind it now, though. I've calculated that had I not done that, had I just stayed on the immune suppressants, which were $5,000 a month, I would have spent over $1 million by now.
And who knows what your would have been either, just with suppressing
Yeah,
the immune system.
yeah,
Can't
it's
be.
been terrible, right? And we know all of our friends who were, on immune suppressants during this pandemic, they've all had to, not exactly go into hiding, but they had to be exceptionally careful. So the backstory. And it's one of the reasons why, once I did those things, I went back to get my blood work tested, and the doctor just said, you don't have it. And I thought, rewind the tape. Wait a second. 6 months ago, you said I had 5 years left. Now I don't even have either of these illnesses. Like, how is that possible? And then, it's kind of like moving the curtain on the Great Oz, right? In the Wizard of Oz, it's like, oh, right. So in fact, the doctor just didn't know. And
does she want to know what you're doing? Did she have any care to explore what might have been in your control that
so
you've
I'm not
done?
the only person who has had this, where you do something, you reverse your condition, and then you say, it's like, hey, look, I reversed it. And then you say, do you want to know what I did? And they say, no, I'm good.
It just baffles me. I've heard that so many times through the years with
Yep.
my own, family, friends, clients. Really
Yeah.
sad.
But this is why we all need to take control. We've got to be empowered. We've got to be our own patient advocates. And, even if we don't have illness at the moment, we just have to be our own advocates. And whether that's to be our own advocates, to be, badass women as we get older, or
Mm-hmm.
to be vital and sexy, or we've got to be our own advocates. It's up to us at the end of the day.
Right.
No one knows for us better than we do.
Leslie, when I started my health coaching, my late husband had passed away and I had gone back to school. And when I was teaching all this health and wellness, like I said, I was even gaining more energy and it was more about self-worth. And, when I cared enough about what I put in my body, everything changed. And it was like, every area of my life. But I can tell you at that time, it was more preventative, and it was very vain. It was all about vanity for me. It was like how looking my best. And then, of course, later I had my own health crisis, on top of that. But I agree. It is so much easier if we start with preventative than having to get right into the shitstorm and have to deal with it that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
were you better? You were feeling better at that point?
Yeah, so I was feeling better at that point. I still had not figured out what was going on with my thyroid. So, fast forward a few more years, and I had discovered, I realized that on ultrasound, I didn't have much thyroid tissue left. So I had lost almost all of it. I had an eighth left. And as a result,
where did it go? I mean, I sound dumb, but
been attacked by my immune system. So
okay.
it was the third autoimmune condition, but the damage on there. I was able to patch the damage to the joints and to the organs soon enough, but I did not catch it to my thyroid. And so I still take Armour thyroid, which is desiccated pig's thyroid, and fantastic. So did that, got pregnant naturally. I had already adopted a child from China, got pregnant naturally, busy, you know, taking care of my kids, but start talking to the moms and dads here in Oxford, England. And the playground is full of these unbelievably smart parents who are doing
tingles. That sounds so awesome.
Yeah, they're just doing kick-ass research. And I'm sort of saying, oh, so what are you doing? Oh, you know, we're curing whatever disease. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So how do we get that out to people? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, do you have a company? No. Why don't you start one? Oh, I don't have money. What are you talking about? I'll raise the money for you. Oh, but I wouldn't know how to run it. I'll find somebody to run it for you. So I then began to advocate for them. I started fundraising for some of these companies. And it was to them that I discovered this wonderful scientist who was working on spermidine. And she was showing that she could actually make the older immune system stronger than the young immune system in mice.
Wow.
So she could
tell me about what's all the positive benefits were happening with these mice.
Well, so what she did, and this is before 2014, so I guess 2012, she was actually taking elderly mice, right, with their little canes. She was taking these older mice, and she was giving them flu vaccine. So here in Britain, you know, it's very cold here. Lots of older people get sick in winter, and so they give all of them the flu vaccine. And she could see in these elderly mice, you give them the flu vaccine, just like nothing happens. Their immune systems have a quick antibody response, and then it just drops. And so she then gave them spermidine and this vaccine, this flu vaccine. And all of a sudden, their antibodies went up, but they remembered, they maintained those antibodies. And she then did the experiment with young mice, like mice that were 20 years, you know, same as a 20-year-old human, and gave them spermidine and vaccines. And guess what? The older mice did better. They had a better response.
Why is that?
Because older people, we are wiser, and the immune system is wiser too, right? We have a larger library of pathogens and viruses that we have seen. So that's what it is. It's just that if the librarian in the library gets amnesia, then she's like, oh, did we see that? Did we see that before? I have no idea, right? So you need to get the immune system young again. But then that paired with the library that the immune system has seen means that the response is better than a younger mouse. And that was really exciting stuff.
Okay, so it's food grade, because I recall hearing, you know, something on the fact that why was this was never made into a pharmaceutical or anything like that.
Yeah.
Right.
But you can't patent the food, right? It's in the food supply. So that means that it's ultra safe, but you also can't take out a patent. Like we can't take out a patent on milk.
Right. But you wonder why, if this works so well with the flu vaccine, why, you know, a pharmacy, you know, a company wouldn't say, okay, we're going to give you a flu. If someone comes in and chooses to get a flu vaccine, like that, we're going to get some spermidine to make the product be, you know, a rock star that we hope it will be.
Yeah, nope, they didn't want to do that because there is no way that you can protect it. So in order for something to become for a pharmaceutical company to create a drug, they need, you know, they need clinical trials. These clinical trials are very expensive. And in order to make sure that they reap the benefits, the commercial benefits later, they need a patent. And you cannot get a patent on a food. So as a result, nobody was interested in this. And I said, wait a second, I think, you know, there are a couple of things that are really successful that don't have patents, like Coca-Cola, right? It's got a brand. Why don't we just take a brand and make sure that we have the highest standards for for safety, for potency, for purity, no mycotoxins, no molds, no heavy metals. Do the testing every single batch. Make sure that we are in the safest manufacturing facilities adhering to the highest standards. I think we could make a brand out of that. And well, we live in Oxford, England, and there is kind of a famous university here, and some people have heard of Oxford. So why don't we just call it Oxford Healthspan and create a brand? So that is what I propose to do. And everybody's like, oh, that doesn't make sense. You need a patent. And I'm just like, Coke doesn't have a patent. I think we can actually do this, because once people see that it works, right? Like you can see that you're getting new hair growth. With me, I've got much longer eyelashes. 57-year-olds should not have eyelashes like this. So yeah. And, people will then see that the proof is in the pudding, right? And I don't think you need a patent to do that.
Right. So there's not that many. I know when I went out to research, I only found two, maybe three companies in total. There aren't a lot.
Yeah.
And what makes your, so you decided to call it Primeadine, which we talked about earlier, which I love. What makes Primeadine, are there differences? And, we didn't even talk about the fact that you have a new product on top of that, free version. But what makes yours, which that alone sets you apart from any other?
That's true. Well, so with Primeadine Original, the three things that set us apart are the fact that we remove those fragile polyunsaturated fatty acids from the wheat germ. So we take those out so you can't go rancid. So other wheat germ derived products, if they are fully derived from wheat germ, then they will begin to form a plug, like a gelatinous plug. And that is the rancidity that has set in. So sometimes they actually color the capsules, so you can't see that. So you don't know what you're, yeah. And the other thing is we add in the prebiotic to potentiate your body's own natural ability to manufacture this, this age inhibiting wonder molecule, right? And that's, for me, getting the body to do what it knows how to do best, that is actually really impactful. So I really wanted the prebiotic, and that takes up a lot of space. So it is 3 capsules that you have to take for a daily dose, and that is because half of the material is the prebiotic, but it's got an important effect.
Yeah, precursor, if you will, to make it really.
Exactly. And we work with world-class scientists and clinicians, and actor George Hamilton, we've got his anti-aging doctor who's one of our clinical advisors. We have other clinical advisors who are more on the academic side. We have one who is a cancer oncology researcher as well as a practicing GP, and we also have the scientist as well. So that adherence to a really strict code on the science and also on the testing. We test in the US. If we also manufacture in the UK and the EU, and we test in these places too. So I'd say the standards, and also the highest manufacturing standards. All the factories are inspected by the FDA. Every 3 years, they have to be inspected and registered with the FDA, and that is for the Japanese plants as well as those in the United States. So I'd say that's it on the original. And then we have the world's first gluten and soy-free spermidine supplement. So as an autoimmune patient, I was on the autoimmune paleo diet for a while. You can't have gluten. You can't have any kind of lectins. Anybody doing Dr. Stephen Gundry's, no lectin diet, you can't do gluten. And there is a small amount of gluten in the Primeadine Original. For people with SIBO or leaky gut or celiac, I just knew we had to find a solution for them. And we did find it in Okinawa, which is great. So we got it from a substrain of chlorella that has naturally high spermidine levels. And we had to test over 100 different types, and we've got to test every single batch. Every time we manufacture. And then we took another autophagy activator. This was kind of cool. Traditional Japanese medicine has a kind of longevity stack, and they use an Okinawan lime peel, and this lime is called shikawasa, and it looks like a cross between a lime and a lemon, but it's the peel that has another molecule called nobilitin, which is itself an autophagy activator. And then we added in a little bit of turmeric, and turmeric is an anti-inflammatory, but so are spermidine and so is nobilitin. So in that product, we have 2 autophagy activators and 3 anti-inflammatories.
Okay, I did not know this. So I'm curious because I did a round of, like, I think ordered like 3 bottles of the gluten to try. Is there, I mean, obviously there's a marked reason why you would completely choose that if you have any issues at all that with gluten, but is there, I don't want to play like favorites, of, your 2 children here. Is there a benefit, to taking one versus the other? Would it be a nice thing to kind of blend, and what's your process on that?
So there are a couple of considerations. We actually have a little quiz on the website that says, take the quiz and we will tell you which one is better for you. Part of it is to do with the fact, if you're a woman and you're menstruating and you're losing iron every month, it's probably better to take the gluten-free version, because chlorella, this particular chlorella, has naturally occurring iron. It has folate, vitamin B12. These are things that are good if you still want to have children, right? And it has naturally occurring vitamin D and K. You want D and K together to drive calcium to the bones and away from the arteries. And it has lutein as well. But I think for me, it's a nice thing for women who are in those reproductive years. The other thing that I'd say is that I think it really depends on your maternal gut biome, because having spoken to literally, well, I'm sure I've talked to over 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 customers now. It's crazy. People who do well on the original have maternal ancestors who were used to eating wheat. And, maybe they came from the Fertile Crescent, maybe they're, from Germany, and they're used to eating a lot of bread. But it just seems to me that people seem to do better. That people whose maternal lines come from, say, coastal areas where there was algae and seaweed and it was incorporated into the diet, it's my feeling they do better on the gluten-free.
Interesting, because I don't know that I necessarily noticed a difference per se for myself. I wasn't necessarily really checking in, but I like that. And I'm thinking I might want to do a little of both.
Yeah.
And just kind of mix it out.
Gluten-free in the morning, and then I do the original at night before bed. Yeah.
So I have a few rapid fire questions. Just the how-tos, and then we can do a little giveaway. I don't want to keep you much longer. I know you're getting late. Okay. All right. So how you take it? First of all, are there anyone can't take it? Is there any contraindications?
Contraindications. I mean, if you're undergoing any kind of like serious medical condition, I have a blanket statement that you should always tell your practitioner whatever supplement you're on, right? And that's omega-3 to us as well. Contraindications for the GF, if you've got hemochromatosis, where you hang on to too much iron, and that's deposited in the organs, sometimes in particular in Northern European men, that can be an issue, then I would say, take the original instead, because gluten-free has just a little bit of iron and you probably don't want it. Now, it is plant iron, which is harder to absorb than iron from meat, but even so, you probably, that would be, say, a contraindication. And obviously celiac disease for the original cannot take.
They should take the gluten-free?
Then they should gluten-free. Yeah, celiac for sure.
Age, what's a sweet spot to begin taking this, barring that you don't have a serious health condition? If you're just kind of
Yeah.
at what stage in life is really this a great time to start?
It really, it depends on your biological age. So if you are aging faster, if your hormones are out of whack, if you are having trouble sleeping, then I would say try, those are indications that you're aging prematurely. For example, at age 39, I had these three autoimmune conditions. Root cause inflammation. Inflammation is a sign of premature aging. I really needed this kind of a product then. So it is very dependent on the individual's biological age. Generally, I would say, though, it's, women who are, say, going into perimenopause, men, over age 40, right? And maximum benefit in those over, I'd say, age 45.
Okay, so as far as dosage, taking morning versus night.
So,
Practice.
right. So, everybody is bio-individual. And again, you'll know this as a health coach, that there's so much variability among humans. But I'd say about 70% of our clients love taking Primeadine Original right before bed. It works for me. It works for pretty much everybody on the team. But there are two people who say it keeps them up at night. We don't know why. Those people also can't take progesterone. They say that progesterone keeps them up at night, right? And so they take it in the morning and they say it helps with energy. So you do have to experiment a bit. And I would say take just, for the original, you have to take 3 capsules. Start with just 1. If you're going to try it before bed, start with just 1. See, look on your Oura ring. Is it helping your sleep or is it making it worse, right? Again, we've got to listen to our bodies and take on board all this juicy data that our bodies are sending us all the time, right? And listen. With gluten-free, I had always, and on the bottle it even says take before 2 p.m. That is because it has naturally occurring vitamin D. I've spoken to lots of functional medicine practitioners who say vitamin D you should have during the day, during daylight, because it's a circadian signal. Our bodies synthesize vitamin D in our skin in response to sunlight. So if vitamin D is circulating, that says to the body, there's sunlight. So I've always said, don't take it before bed. And yet there are people who have actually charted taking gluten-free right before bed, and they show their Oura ring scores, and they're getting over 2 hours of deep sleep. And they're like, look at this is fantastic. It's so great for sleep. So I had to say, well, it's working for them. Maybe the amount of spermidine is so much higher than the vitamin D that it outweighs it. I don't know. But yeah, I think you can take both right before bed. You can experiment with that.
If you have to take the 3 of the stuff, can you split the 3 up from 1 at night and 2 in the day, or do you, in general, once you figure out your protocol, take them all at one time?
I think it is, and again, from as having been a health coach myself at one point, I think it's just easier to take them all at one time, right? Just in terms of remembering and bedding it into a ritual, right? And yeah, I would say if you take it in the morning before you eat anything and in the evening, right before you go to bed, you are extending your window of autophagy where you're not eating, because remember, fasting also triggers autophagy.
I love.
We are extending that fast by taking it before we eat in the morning. We are in a already fasted, nice fasted state. Take some more of this, take the spermidine, and you are activating autophagy even more. So
love it. Okay, let's see. I think we've covered just about everything that I wanted to cover.
Somebody asked a question, but I didn't get to it. It kind of went so quickly, and they said here for my question from above, but I didn't see what that was. So
I can see. Oh, let's see. Please answer my question from above. Let's see. What is your question? Oh yeah. So she's asking, why is Primeadine more expensive than other good quality third-party tested Spermidine products? Although I don't really find that to be the with your 3-bottle discount. Honestly, that's also one of the. I looked at all the factors, to be honest, Leslie, and that was one of the factors. You know, obviously for me as well is financial. And you offer a 3-bottle thing, which to me is less expensive than any of the leading brands that are out there.
Yeah. So I think that one thing is that there are companies that manufacture Spermidine and they say, you know, we have 5 milligrams of Spermidine, 8 milligrams, 10 milligrams of Spermidine, and they are, say, around the $60 mark. And
Okay.
the issue is that by and large, that's synthetic. Synthetic is not only illegal, it is not safety tested. We have not done tests in humans with synthetic Spermidine. They don't exist. And while it is, again, it's a 2-dimensional molecular mimic, we don't know if it is. It's not a 3-dimensional mimic. We don't know how safe it is. And the biggest example of a 2-dimensional mimic is thalidomide. I don't know if people know what thalidomide is. It was given to women who had nausea during pregnancy in the 50s and 60s. America avoided this, but in Great Britain, women were given this and babies were born with terrible birth defects. I mean, missing arms, missing legs. We don't know. I'm not saying that this is the case with those, you know, synthetic spermidines, but 2-dimensional molecular chemical mimics do not equal 3-dimensional food-derived mimics. I'm not mimics, 3-dimensional food-derived molecules. Food we know is safe, and we do not know that with these 2-dimensional molecular mimics. One other thing I've noticed is that, and we've had this tested, I've seen bottles of Spermidine where it says Spermidine ingredients, wheat germ with Spermidine. And again, like really looks reasonable price point. It looks like it's from food. Send it to the lab in Japan, and they're like, there's, you know, this is like a tiny amount of wheat germ, and the rest is synthetic. And so it's cut. That's the, you know, that's easy. It is a tiny amount of wheat germ, and it is cut with this cheaper synthetic stuff. So, you know, caveat emptor.
Yeah, I think there's, you know, that's why you know, it becomes, you start, you know, I look at it, it's almost like a part of my food budget. You know,
Yeah.
you have to, I think that that's really the best way to look at when you're taking any supplementation is, I understand that cost is a huge factor. I completely appreciate if, you know, I also know, especially anything can be in a capsule, anything can be put in, you know, into such a unregulated sort of thing, unless you take all the measures as a company to really regulate that. So I love what your company has done, what Primeadine has come, what it stands for. You know, the diligence that you've done within the industry for your brand is, you know, and for the product is commendable, and it's exciting.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I'm trying to think how we're going to do this giveaway. I'm almost thinking that I post something. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to post, actually, is the gal that asked a question, are you still on? Jamad Photography. Are you still on? If you are, give me a wave. And if not, let's see, they're asking, where's the best place to buy it in Europe?
You can also get it from oxfordhealthspan.com. You know, we have a warehouse in Europe as well, in the EU. In other countries like Norway, we have a wholesaler, for instance, who takes care of that. Yeah.
And I have a discount code, Vanessa15, for 15% off for your first order to try. So that is a huge discount. You guys definitely take advantage of Vanessa15. You can just go right to their website for that. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Age is not synthetic. Let's see. All right, Joanna. All right, so we got lots. All right, so Joanna, Joe Mahad Photography. Oh, good. Hi, you're there. Well, thanks for engaging with us. You are going to win win a bottle of Spermidine from Primeadine. So I will, let me take a think. I will make sure we send you a private direct message and get your information to send that out. And, you know, I know that you are going to give a few more bottles away, Leslie. I think what I'd like to do, what I'd like to do is I'm going to make a little post after this, kind of a recap. And I'm going to do kind of a giveaway contest with those, if that's okay.
Perfect.
That'll get more,
totally fine.
Right, and then send people to your, you know, directly to your Instagram page as well, so they can learn more about your product.
Excellent. Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, thank you so much for giving, you know, for inviting me on, and just so lovely to be able to hang out with you for a bit.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. I love your product. I love that you're a woman-owned business, that you're just doing the good work. And this is like in my arsenal to stay. It's a year and a half going strong. So thank you, Leslie. Have a beautiful evening. And thank you all for stopping by. And remember, Vanessa 15 for 15% off. And the product is called Primeadine. And the website is called
OxfordHealthSpan.com.
OxfordHealthSpan.com. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Until next time.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Take care.